Newly announced 30% on the European Union and Mexico, set to go into effect on August 1st.
For Canada, we're only going to accept the best deal for Canada. That is very much informed.
While Washington sleeps, Canada and Mexico are rewriting the rules of North American trade without the United States. In a stunning joint move, Canadian finance figure Mark Carney and Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum unveiled the Northern Corridor, a $120 billion, 9,200-kilometer rail and port megaproject designed to bypass U.S. territory entirely. The goal? Move goods from steel coils and EV batteries to soybeans without touching a single American customs checkpoint. The numbers are staggering. 30% U.S. tariffs incoming for $1 billion in lost customs revenue and zero oversight from Washington. Reuters estimates the route, stretching from Prince Rupert, Canada to Mazatlan, Mexico, will siphon off freight worth more than Detroit's entire 2024 auto payroll. Funded by a $3.3 billion private consortium, the corridor features an 8 million container superport on Mexico's Pacific Rim, an end run around U.S. tariffs set to take effect August 1st. The implications? Pricier lumber at Home Depot, slower assembly lines in Michigan, and a potential budget hole the size of Nebraska's GDP. Washington's own records show steel tariffs under Section 232 brought in just $2.5 billion over 9 months, less than 0.04% of total federal revenue. If even a fraction of cross-border trade reroutes through this new corridor, that revenue vanishes while prices rise. So the question isn't just economic, it's strategic. Who really controls North American trade now? The White House, or two neighbors who just built a fast lane around it? Stick with us, because by the end of this video, you'll understand how one shortcut could redraw the continent's supply chains and decide whether your next car rolls off a U.S. lot at all. For Canada, the payoff is immediate. Battery packs assembled in Monterey can now travel straight to Vancouver showrooms, completely bypassing U.S. toll booths and border inspections. Every freight car that skips American soil widens the price gap between U.S. and Canadian-Mexican production. Ironically, it's the very margin Washington's tariffs were designed to close. Supporters of the Northern Corridor are calling it a Panama Canal on rails, arguing that the combination of tariff immunity and a one-day sailing time reduction could shave up to 7% off delivery costs for exporters to the West Coast. For Washington, that's not just a hit to customs revenue, it's a loss of economic leverage. The U.S. can inspect documents, but it can't tax a train that never crosses its border. Customs experts have a name for this: regulatory seepage. Once an alternate route opens, freight naturally flows toward the path of least resistance, until either policy adjusts or entire factories relocate. And factories are already on edge. A recent Auto Parts Association survey found that 41% of suppliers are eyeing partial moves to Canada or Mexico if tariff relief remains uncertain into Q4. In that light, the Northern Corridor is less a workaround and more a pressure valve. The higher the tariffs go, the more freight diverts, and the louder the blowback from Midwestern voters who feel the squeeze. Stay tuned. The first train is scheduled to roll before the new U.S. tariffs take effect. Its whistle may be heard all the way to Capitol Hill. This didn't happen overnight. Back in March 2020, Ottawa committed $2.3 billion Canadian dollars from its National Trade Corridors Fund to revamp the Pacific Gateway. Prince Rupert was first in line: new docks, expanded rail connections, and upgraded grain terminals. For years later, the investment is delivering. The port now handles over 23 million tons of cargo annually, a number that continues to grow. And Canada isn't slowing down. This summer, an additional $2.5 billion Canadian dollars is being poured into multi-terminal upgrades, locking in high-speed, double-stack rail lines. Asian imports can now zip through Saskatchewan overnight and reach Chicago a full day faster than they once arrived in Seattle. Mexico is keeping pace. Last December, President Claudia Sheinbaum approved a $1.6 billion infrastructure push to upgrade 6 major Mexican ports: Veracruz, Altamira, Manzanillo, and 3 others, along with a toll-free expressway across Sonora and Durango. The public message? Boost capacity. The private reality? Tariff immunity. Manzanillo is leading the charge. A Reuters visit in April found dredgers deepening the harbor and crews pouring new docks designed to handle 10 million containers a year, double last year's throughput. Navy engineers say the concrete will set before the first round of U.S. tariffs take effect in August. Zoom out, and the full scale becomes clear. Prince Rupert already moves the weight of 250,000 loaded rail cars annually. Manzanillo is on track to surpass Los Angeles in box traffic. And now, a seamless corridor of rail and highway connects them without touching a single U.S. customs checkpoint. For Washington, every mile of that corridor acts like a pressure valve. The higher tariffs go, the more freight bleeds out to Canada and Mexico, starving Midwestern mills and leaving U.S. border warehouses underused. And this shift isn't waiting on Capitol Hill. The first double-stack train departs Prince Rupert at 6:40 a.m. tomorrow, hours before Congress even meets. The impact is already visible in the numbers. In 2024, the U.S. recorded $762.1 billion in goods trade with Canada and $839.9 billion with Mexico, together making up 1/3 of all U.S. imports. Now imagine just 10% of that trade rerouted through the Northern Corridor, away from Buffalo rail yards and Laredo truck gates. This isn't a protest. It's a redesign, and the tracks are already set. Point 1 detour. $160 billion in rerouted cargo. And with it, the quiet erasure of customs declarations, merchandise processing fees, and harbor taxes that usually pad the federal books. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP collected $92.3 billion in duties and fees in FY 2023, second only to the IRS in government revenue. Lose even a fraction of cross-border trade, steel, EV batteries, wheat, and the financial gap starts to echo in budget hearings. But factories will feel the pinch first. With supply chains diverting, Midwest automakers are already bidding higher for Canadian coil, as more of it now rolls south to Mazatlan's new docks. Gulf Coast chemical plants are stuck paying extra to haul. Mexican soda ash back through Houston instead of taking the tariff-free rail route to Vancouver. And for U.S. consumers, the math hits at the checkout. A mere 1 to 2% drop in U.S. port volume could spark a 4-cent price increase per dollar on imported goods, according to a May briefing from the National Retail Federation to Senate staff. And all this is happening before a single Trump-era 30% surcharge appears on CBP's digital ledger on August 1st. In short, the Northern Corridor isn't just a route change, it's a power shift. A reallocation of trade authority from Washington to two neighbors who just redrew the supply chain map without asking for permission. And Washington may not even see the data flowing out. Back on March 5th at a COAC meeting, U.S. Customs advisors endorsed a new North American single window system, a platform allowing Canada and Mexico to exchange customs data without routing a single byte through U.S. servers. Built on blockchain, the system verifies certificates of origin once, validates them twice, and never passes through a CBP screen. Washington's fee machine is about to meet a ledger it can't touch. Point 1 technical tweak, and an entire U.S. revenue stream vanishes. Under the latest inflation adjustment, CBP charges a $32.71 merchandise processing fee for every commercial import entry. In fiscal 2024, that added up to 38.4 million entries, generating roughly $1.26 billion in federal revenue. But the moment shipments are processed through the Canada-Mexico customs ledger, every one of those transactions is reclassified as a foreign-to-foreign transfer, and CBP's fee line drops to zero. Then comes the second blow: speed. A recent UN trade study found that countries implementing electronic single-window systems cut customs clearance times from 3 to 5 days to under 24 hours. North America's pilot rollout may appear conservative, but the impact is real. Rail carriers on the Northern Corridor say they're already shaving 4 to 5 hours per shipment, beating a congested Laredo crossing by a full shift. That time edge is enough to lure high-value cargo away from U.S. toll routes. CBP has already seen what this future looks like. In its NAFTA-CAFTA blockchain pilot, U.S. Customs officers reported near-instant communication with traders and the elimination of duplicate data entries, exactly the kind of paperwork delays that border towns profit from today. Add it all up, and the math is punishing. One distributed ledger wipes out over $1 billion in fees, slashes dwell times enough to divert premium freight, and leaves Washington arguing with algorithms it doesn't control. The Northern Corridor just found its secret weapon, and it's not steel or soy. It's software. Software is already ghosting the U.S. border before the first boxcar even rolls past the Rio Grande. Factory floors are starting to feel it long before blockchain charts flash red. On April 14, 2025, GM halted production on its Bright Drop electric van line in Ingersoll, Ontario, sending 1,200 workers home and warning at least 500 jobs may remain idle until October while the plant retools for a 2026 battery upgrade. One GM badge disappears from a line, and like dominoes, 7 more jobs vanish, from steel welders to lunch truck cooks. Those 83,860 direct auto jobs support another 27,420 in the supply chain and 291,280 Main Street paychecks. That's nearly 500,000 livelihoods tied to every shift whistle. Put simply, lose 1,000 factory jobs and 7,000 Midwestern paychecks go with them. Zoom out further, and the stakes get even heavier. According to the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, 10.1 million Americans, about 5% of the entire private sector, depend on the auto industry. Every new assembly job supports 9 more in logistics, parts, and transport. So if the Northern Corridor starts pulling even a fraction of EV battery module production from Michigan to Quebec, the ripple will become a wave. The unions see it coming. On May 14th, the Longshore Union blasted Trump's tariffs as an economic war on working folks after cargo through LA/Long Beach plunged 30% in a single month. Dock workers warn, once freight shifts to Prince Rupert or Mazatlan, it may never cruise back, and their bargaining power sinks with it. Auto leaders echo the alarm. UAW locals warn that every canceled production run chips away at the fragile supplier base that keeps Detroit breathing. On Capitol Hill, staffers are doing the math on napkins. If GM's BrightDrop pause alone risks 9,000 US and Canadian jobs, imagine what happens when this corridor starts moving hundreds of thousands of vehicles. The industrial Midwest isn't guessing anymore. It's bracing. The Midwest isn't facing a trade squabble. It's staring at a fiscal time bomb. Because the real question now isn't whether tariffs shake up boardrooms, it's whether Washington acts before the real dominoes fall. The steel mills, the stamping presses, even the diners down the street from the plant gates. Stop the presses. A $120 billion steel and auto corridor has just detoured around Washington's toll booth. Mexico has joined Canada's northern corridor, turning a single rail ribbon into a full-blown continental escape hatch. This isn't a shortcut, it's a stress test of the White House's 30% tariff wall. Hold that line, and Detroit may be tightening bolts with empty hands, while U.S. Customs booths count fewer and fewer trucks. Blink, offer a last-minute quota for tariff truce, and maybe the bleeding slows. But either way, the rule is clear. Whoever builds the infrastructure writes the playbook. So here's your cliffhanger. Does Washington swallow its pride? Or do Ottawa and Mexico wave the first freight train past the U.S. border guards? Drop your prediction below, because the comment section might just script tomorrow's headlines.